And
I don't think that's representative.
go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Sue Whitaker, and we are going to talk a little bit about Al and my trip to Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. Al's the chief photographer, so most of the pictures you see he took. But I'm getting better. Some of these are actually mine. There's hope for me, right, Al?
Mm-hmm.
So the great thing is, we left Pennsylvania in a snowstorm, and we arrived in Santiago to this incredibly gorgeous summer day with the sun shining and the palm trees and 80 degrees. Al and I joke we're the only people we know that retired and moved north, kind of backwards. But we try to go away somewhere. We both grew up in the north, but we're not that fond of winter. So we like to go someplace warm. So this time, we left Baltimore, and you can see the snow down there as the sun was setting, one of Al's pretty pictures, and arrived in Santiago about 7:30 in the morning. We were really lucky because our hotel was ready for us, so we actually got to get in the room and take, you feel so yucky after a plane ride. And then we headed out, and we went to this is Santiago, Chile. We went to the Plaza des Armas, and that is a beautiful plaza downtown where you really get to see all the locals. Aren't a lot of tourists, but some. This is the cathedral there, the Santiago Metropolitan Cathedral. It's the seat of the archdiocese for that particular country. Built back around 1750 originally, and some other things added to it over time. This is actually the fifth one that was built on this particular site. The interior I thought was really beautiful. I loved the silver and the gold combination. I thought that was just really, really pretty. That's the central nave. And of course the statue of Santiago, St. James. The ceilings are so beautiful. Sometimes we get in these places and we forget to look up, but the ceilings are just stunning. St. James. And then, of course, we had to eat great food. And Al says, for some unknown reason, Chile had the best coffee. He never got a bad cup of coffee. We expected good coffee in Brazil, but he thought the coffee in Chile was the best. The seafood was wonderful, and things were quite inexpensive. And then we went to their little central market. They had some weird things. This was a rather strange statue to the indigenous people. It was designed to commemorate the bravery of the Mapuche people, who were the indigenous inhabitants of South Central Chile. Unusual. We don't have one of those in the United States. And then the next morning we were supposed to go down to a couple of small towns along the coast, but that got canceled at the last possible second, which is never fun. But we ended up going to the Museum of Memory and Human Rights, which was I thought was really interesting. It just housed a whole lot of testimonies, documents, archives, everything related to the violations of human rights that were committed during the last military dictatorship there in 1973 to 1990. All the background of what went on there, and then how they were able to transition back to democracy. So I thought it was just a really unique sort of place. That's some of the kinds of things that you saw on the memorial wall to the people who disappeared, and they really have made a huge effort to remember, because if you don't remember the past, you're doomed to repeat it. So they really have made a point of that. They had beautiful parks that we were able to wander through, which we enjoyed. I loved the white swans with the black heads. They were all over the place there, which were really kind of cool. And then the street art. They're very big on street art. They have them all over the place. This is the Recoleta area. and just really cool to walk around the streets and see all the street art that they have there. Then we went up to San Cristobal Hill, and this is the view out across the city. And the famous statue, of course, is in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, the Christ statue. But here they have the Virgin Mary, and that's up at the summit, and it is 14 meters tall, and you can see it from around Santiago, looking out across the city. And it's kind of nice to be in the cities and look up and see these things. And then we just toured around. At this point, we were on our own initially, and then we joined a tour group. It was a small tour group. It was a really interesting tour group. We were all Americans, but there were only about 5 of us that were actually born in the United States. There was a group of 5, I believe, from Israel, several people from India, Japan. So it was a really interesting group to spend time with. And we were a pretty small group. I think there were around 24 of us. So then we just toured around. This is the old Congress building. And then this is the seat of the President of Chile, the big palace. And then we headed out to the wine country. Chile, of course, is famous for its wines. So we went to one of the wineries out there, and I just like to get out into the countryside and kind of see the countryside and all. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. But the wines were good too. And you can see we did try some wines. And learned a little bit about winemaking in Chile. That's a big thing. And then, believe it or not, with all the traveling we do, I hate to fly. I really don't like it. But the only way I can see the places I want to go is to get on a plane, so I do it anyway. This was the most incredible plane ride I have ever been on. It was like one of the highlights of the trip, which for me to say is pretty amazing because I don't like plane rides. It was one of our many internal flights. We had 4 internal flights to get to all the places we wanted to go. And so I always get an aisle seat, but I was assigned a window seat, and I was so grateful because we flew all the way down the coast to Patagonia, and we flew over the high Andes. And the views were just amazing.
What are we looking at there?
This is, we're on the plane, and we're looking down along the coast of Chile at the high Andes, and that was just one of the lakes.
Glacier.
And the glacier,
The glacier,
yeah, that we
yeah.
flew over.
So
And
many.
here you can see some of the different glaciers, the little lakes. And I think you get a better sense of the height of the mountains when you're looking down on them. When you try to take a picture from the bottom, you don't really get. But, oh my gosh, it was stunning, stunning, stunning. The rivers, the coastline, the volcano. You could really see the caldera, because we flew right over the caldera of the volcano. And you can see in the picture on the far side, you can see the glacier and the ice fields coming down. So it was just one of the most beautiful plane rides I've ever had, which was a wonderful surprise because I don't exactly look forward to plane rides. Then we got where we were going, and we had to take a bus to the next place. There's a lot of driving around. We arrived at Puerto Natales and stopped at one of the big sheep ranches. And of course, Chile is also, Patagonia is noted for its sheep ranches. And it was amazing to watch them shear the sheep. They are so fast, and they shear it all in one big piece.
Please.
It's really, really pretty cool. And the sheepdogs are so much fun to watch and see what they are able to do. And then, of course, we have the barbecue. You can see the, yeah, you can see the sheep right there in the barbecue. Great food. And then this is a little town called Puerto Natales at the opening of the Ultima Esperanza Sound in Patagonia. Patagonia is the area way at the base, and part of it is Chile and part of it is Argentina. So this is the Chile side of it. It's the closest you can get on the mainland to Antarctica. So as Al said, this time we went so far south we got cold again. So we took a boat ride out on the Sound. It was unbelievably windy. People were really seasick. And the waves were so high that eventually we had to turn around and come back. I wish I'd gotten a picture of the waves, but I couldn't get out onto the deck in order to do it. But it was really, really beautiful. There's our little boat, and we were in a cove. At that point we stopped and had to decide if we were going to be able to continue. We were supposed to be doing a hike, but they had to cancel the hike because it was so windy we would blow off the side of the mountain. Which I was glad they canceled it. That did not sound like fun. But you can kind of see my hair flying around out there. And then they ended up, the wind was 60 to 70 miles an hour. Which, if you haven't ever been in wind of 60 to 70 miles an hour, it's unbelievable. So we ended up having to turn around and come back, which was, by that time, all right, because so many people were getting seasick. But we did get a beautiful rainbow out of it. And look at those mountains. And you can see the can you see the reflection of the rainbow on the side of the mountain? Yeah. Yeah. So that was really, really just stunning. This was actually our view from the lodge that we stayed at. So you just look right out on these incredible, incredible mountains. They're so high. I've discovered I just love the really, really, really high mountains. There's something about that. But everywhere you look, just these incredible views. And everything's covered with snow and ice on the mountains. So you can see the green where we were, but then as you look up the mountains, you can see how the colors change. But just beautiful, beautiful area. Then we took a hike. We had a local guide who decided this would be a good hike. Our tour director had never been on this hike before, and a lot of us weren't exactly in the greatest shape in the world, but he told us, oh, it's a little 20-minute hike. It's mostly flat. Right at the end, there's a little hill that you go up, and then you're at the end. And if it gets to be too much, you can turn around and come back. Well, 40 minutes into the hike, I'm thinking, I don't know about this, and so I said, maybe we need to turn around. No. See that hill right there? Right there at the top of the hill is the end. Okay, I can do that. We get up to the top, no, then we go down the hill, then we go up the hill, then we go down the hill. Wasn't sure I was going to make it, but success, I did. I was rather proud of myself, but it was by the time, as you got toward the end, it was just steep rocks. And I have artificial knees, and that was not the best. But anyway, it was interesting. This was one of the beautiful little lakes. And the waterfall. And these are guanaco, which are a type of llama. It was so strange to be just out walking and, oh, look, there's a llama. Or you're driving down the road. Oh, we have to stop. The llamas are crossing. This is actually guanaco, which is a particular type of llama.
Are they domestic or are
No, they're just wild llamas.
They're wild.
Out running around. Yeah, they're wild. Then we crossed over to El Calafate, And that point, we crossed the border from Chile over into southern Argentina. So now we're in Argentina. And we had a bunch of storks. Their storks are a little different because they don't have the pink algae, so they're more white, the white flamingos, which was interesting. And of course the rheas, equally beautiful on the Argentinian side. This is one of the ice fields and glaciers. So I was sort of confused about glaciers and ice fields. You might be too, but the ice fields are just huge fields of ice. Glaciers actually move. And so an ice field can spawn a number of different glaciers that move. So this is Los Glaciares National Park, the Glaciers National Park. So obviously it was full of glaciers and we really enjoy those. This particular one is the Perito Moreno Glacier. It's often considered the 8th wonder of the world because of the spectacular view it offers. This is one that actually, one of the few in the world that hasn't retreated. And so it is a very large glacier and it's one of the best to view. And you can see, you're able to get fairly close to it. And then here is where we were able to actually walk down. They have this trail that you can walk down. And you're right on top, practically on top of that glacier, which is unusual. You usually can't get that close because, of course, glaciers calve and the big icebergs come down and crash. And so you can't always, let's see if this is going. Oh, it is. Now, I hope you appreciated that because I waited and waited and waited and waited and waited and waited for that thing to calf in front of me so I could get a picture. But you usually can't get very close to glaciers because of that. They won't let the boats get real close. But we were able to, we were right across from it, so it was really cool. And you could hear it calving all around with the crash. And what is so amazing to me is the different colors that you get. You think of ice like an ice cube, it's just clear. But different parts of the glacier were very different colors. You can see in one place it's white, another place it's very, very blue with a fair amount of gray in it. We already did that. And here you can see some of the different angles of it. And this one I just thought was so pretty with the way the blues and just the way it was cut. Piece of ice that came off the glacier. You have ice floating around out there, of course. And then, of course, we had to eat some more. Now we're in Argentina. And Argentina is in a financial crisis, which, of course, is very bad for people in Argentina. But if you happen to be a tourist, it's amazing. Inflation is over 250%. It's running around 300%.
Yeah.
It really gives you a different perspective because we think inflation is so bad in the United States and we're all so upset about our economy and how awful the inflation is. But when you go to other countries, you realize what real inflation is. But the American dollar bought an incredible amount. We went to a really upscale restaurant. You can see all the wines and stuff in the background. So we don't normally go, but we went to this very upscale restaurant. Now, we had a glass of champagne to begin, and then we had all these different types of breadsticks. Very interesting. And then we had a big thing of different types of bread, and then we had 3 different appetizers because one would not be enough, of course. So we had 3 different appetizers, and then we had this monstrous steak. Al's eaten about half of his before I remembered to take a picture. An enormous salad, empanadas. Then Al had his specialty coffee for dessert, and we paid $40 for the 2 of us. No.
Yeah.
Doesn't that make you want to go to Argentina right now? Now they tell you don't get any Argentinian money, just use your credit card. But everything was so inexpensive in Argentina. It was just unbelievable. But you had to feel for the people there, because you can imagine what 300% inflation does to somebody. They loved it when we tipped with American dollars. And we went to the night market, and night markets are always fun, and you see all the local crafts and so on that people are doing. And then we went out, of course, to see more boat rides and more glaciers. So this is out on the Argentine lake. And here is where you're really able to get the best view of the icebergs. I had never actually been out on the sea with icebergs around me. When we were in Iceland, we went in a bay where there were some icebergs, but this was out where you really had huge, huge icebergs. And again, they were just so beautiful with all the different colors in them. They had black, blue, gray, white. It was cold on the deck, but it was well worth it. You can see we're pretty bundled up. But look at those icebergs. It was just amazing to be sailing around through all these icebergs. They're all different, and they are massive. And then we stopped for lunch at the Spegazzini Glacier. So there we are at the Spegazzini, and that's the Spegazzini Glacier. We got to see lots of glaciers. And there's our little boat that we came in on. You know, it never fails to amaze me when I'm traveling at how beautiful this world really is, and how different it is as you go from one place to another. It just always makes me appreciate. And I find, I don't know, I know there's people believe in evolution, people don't believe in evolution. I think you can believe in evolution and believe in God. To me, there just has to be a hand behind it. How could all that happen by accident and be that incredible? Is the way I look at it. But every time I travel, I am just blown away by how beautiful this world of ours is. It is amazing. Well, from there, we ended up continuing on, and we went to Buenos Aires. These are the views of the city from our room in Buenos Aires. We had a nice variety of being out in the mountains, being out on the water, being in the city, being on the beach. Tremendous variety. So we toured around. This is the Plaza de Mayo, and one of the little churches on the plaza, the War Memorial. It's the oldest public square in Buenos Aires, and has been the scene of many of the most important events in the city's history. One of the most interesting ones to me is the Madres de la Plaza de Mayo. These are the mothers of the plaza, and they began meeting in the square in 1977 to demand information about their missing children during Argentina's last military dictatorship. And they continue to meet in the square and march around that pyramid every Thursday at 3:30, commemorating the lost. And they really make an effort to remember some of those things that happened. Now this is the Cathedral of Buenos Aires, and that is where Pope Francis was cardinal before he became the Pope. It's a beautiful cathedral, a little more simple than a lot of them, but very beautiful. And they're very, very proud of him there, as they should be. This is some shots of the interior. Again, another beautiful, beautiful cathedral. The Catholic cathedrals tend to be extremely ornate, very, very impressive. The next cathedral I'll show you a little bit later in the slideshow you'll find is very different for a reason. But this one, again, was just really beautiful cathedral. And then this is an interesting area. This is La Boca, and it is the brightly colored area, home of the tango. And you can see it's kind of a wild area. But oh, the empanadas. We fell in love with empanadas. This is the balcony at the Executive Mansion, from which Ava Perón spoke. If you saw the movie Evita, she stands on the balcony and she sings. I won't sing for you. You should be grateful. And this is her tomb at the cemetery there. And the tango. Al and I actually took a tango lesson. We have pictures of us tangoing. You will not see them. There is a reason. I find the tango sort of a strange dance. They tend to look mad at each other all the time. But whatever. The next day was just a free day where you could kind of do what you wanted. And so Al and I chose to take a boat ride down the river because we hadn't had enough boat rides, right? So we went down the Plata River. It's the widest river in the world, down to the Tigre River Delta. It was a beautiful day, just gorgeous, and such a nice boat ride. We really enjoyed it. All along the river, you would see some of these like shacks where the local people would come on the weekend or whatever to enjoy the water. But then you also saw pretty fancy homes along the water. And some really fancy ones. It's a beautiful, interesting area because there's just hundreds of little islands and stuff on the delta. And so everything is done by boat. They have a school bus boat that picks the kids up to take them to school. They have the grocery store boat that comes around so you can buy your groceries. They have the medical boat that brings the doctor and the dentist and everything. But it's all very water-based, which was just interesting to see how people live in that particular area. But everybody's out on the water all the time. And this is the little town. And then we flew to Iguazu. And this is the Argentinian side. Iguazu Falls is on the border between Brazil and Argentina. And I love waterfalls. So definitely wanted to see Iguazu Falls. And I am so glad we did, because talk about power and majesty. Those are the most beautiful falls I've ever seen. I like them better than Victoria Falls in Africa, and they're way better than Niagara Falls. It's my personal bias, but I hated Niagara Falls. I thought they totally ruined it. To me, it's like Myrtle Beach or something. It's all built up. They do a much better job here. It's very natural. They have paths, trails, so you can walk along. But you don't see hotels and restaurants and all that. That stuff's way, way back. It's just really stunning. One of the most beautiful, beautiful waterfalls. It was extremely hot and humid. I will say that. But it was so worth it. The falls were just stunning. So, look at those falls. How can you not love those falls? Isn't that incredible?
Got another rainbow in there too.
Oh yes, yes. You got the rainbow over the falls. And you can kind of get a sense of the height of the falls in that one picture as you're looking down. We were at the top looking down over the falls. But they were stunning. It's actually a series of 275 different falls. Some of them that kind of blend together. You can see here, they're kind of separate falls as they come down. We did a mile walk along the top of the falls and then went down and did a mile walk along the bottom. So you got to see the falls from both angles, which was really nice. It's wider than Niagara, higher than Niagara, and has far more drops. But just lots of different waterfalls. You can see sometimes we're at the top and sometimes we're looking up. But you really, we were talking about how you have to be in a place. You really have to be in that place to sense the power of that water.
Is this on the river at the head of the river that you were showing us the?
No, it's a
that's
different
a different spot.
Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite ones. I just like that one. And I actually took that one. I was kind of proud. Sometimes you had smaller falls going into pools. Sometimes you had huge ones. And you can see how green and lush it is. It's so wet.
Oh my gosh.
I got a little carried away with the pictures. You can't help it. And they had monkeys, and a coyote, and a lizard. I always like seeing the wildlife too. So that was part of it was the Argentinian side, and part of it was the Brazilian side. So at that point we crossed over into Brazil to see the Brazilian side of the waterfall. And then we flew to Rio de Janeiro. And this, of course, is Rio de Janeiro. We were at Rio just like a week, 10 days before Carnival. I was really happy we weren't there during Carnival. One of the guys in our tour stayed, and he posted some of the videos and pictures and all, and I thought, no, that's not for me. But it was kind of nice. Some of the people went and did some of the background tours where they take you in, where they have all the costumes, and you see a rehearsal and things like that. We didn't do that, but you could certainly see. This is our view from the hotel room. We were right on Copacabana Beach, and so that is the famous Copacabana Beach. So, of course, one of the first things we did was take the train up Corcovado Mountain to see the Christ the Redeemer statue. And that's the Christ the Redeemer statue. You really can see it from all over Rio. So wherever you are in Rio, when you look up, there's Christ welcoming you, which I thought was such a deep thing. But yeah, you just see it from everywhere. So from the top, looking down, you can see the beautiful bay there. It was really, really some beautiful, beautiful views.
Where is it open to the ocean?
That bay, you can't really see, but there's a very small opening, but it's not much. You can see beyond it is the harbor. It's one of the most famous, best harbors in the world. And when you're out on it, you can see why, because there's a fairly small entrance. And then you come into this nice, big, deep harbor. And then the harbor is all surrounded by mountains, so it's extremely protected. And this is the very famous Ipanema Beach. And the girl from Ipanema.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved the way they did all the tile work and everything. It's so pretty. It was a beautiful, beautiful beach. And then we went up Sugarloaf Mountain, because it's all surrounded by mountains. That one we did by cable car. And again, beautiful views looking down on the city. And you can see how the city is completely surrounded. Water on one side and mountains on the other. Okay, now this is the other church. Not your typical Catholic cathedral. This is the Metropolitan Cathedral of Rio de Janeiro. And it's this circular concrete building. Reportedly, it was built by some Catholic bishops in protest against what they perceived as the excesses of the Catholic Church. So I thought that was really interesting. The building is actually, the shape is meaningful. It is shaped like an ancient Mayan temple. And another thing that I find really interesting in South America is the way that Christianity and the ancient beliefs melt. So many of the holidays where they used to take the idols and parade them, now they just take the saints out of the church and parade them. You know, it's really interesting. One of my favorite pieces of art was in Peru, actually, but it was the Last Supper. Remember how Al's laughing? He knows what I'm going to say. So for the Last Supper, that's bread and wine. and guinea pig. Yes, because
It's good.
they eat guinea pigs. Well, you thought you liked guinea pig?
Guinea pig's good, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was horrible. I thought it was the boniest, nastiest meat. I did taste it, yes. But you know, it's how you interpret it through your own culture. And for all of their big holidays, birthdays, big celebrations, you have guinea pig.
Yeah.
So clearly at the Last Supper, they must have had guinea pig. Yes, yes. So this is another example where they took the Mayan temple type structure and built a Catholic cathedral. So it's interesting. The stained glass windows, the interior, I didn't think the exterior was particularly attractive, but I did like the interior. I thought the interior was rather neat. This is the window at the very top of that pyramid shape, and then you have the stained glass windows, the 4 big stained glass windows coming off that. So it's fairly simple, but it was really stunning. The way the light came in and the way you have the cross and then kind of the extended cross. So it was a very different cathedral. You wouldn't find that in the United States. But it was very impressive once you got inside, and I liked that aspect of it.
Is that a bell
A bell.
on the bottom of the crucifix?
I'm not sure what that is, to tell you the truth.
And the double cross piece?
Yeah.
It's more reminiscent of the Greek Orthodox kind of thing.
Yes, it does look a little Greek Orthodox, and I think too with that open piece there,
Yeah.
bottom, yeah. But interesting how they did that. And then this was out front, and I liked this too. Again, I think it's
Yeah.
reminding us it was against the excesses of the Catholic Church, and this is homeless Jesus.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, homeless Jesus, reminding us. And I found that very poignant.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked the concept of what they were doing with that church. It's very, very controversial, as you can imagine. Some people consider it an eyesore in Rio, but I could kind of appreciate it.
We saw the same bronze piece in Scotland
Mhm.
while we traveled.
There are several around the world. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's a good reminder, you know.
Yeah.
And then, this was the view from our plane at sunrise as we left Rio to go home. I think traveling is broadening. You just see different things and different perspectives, kind of like the church there. It gives you a different perspective on things. I love meeting the people. We met a lot of really interesting people. People in our tour group were extremely interesting. We had some really good conversations with the folks from Israel about what the Israel and Palestinian, what was going on there. One from the Ukraine. These were all very, very successful, you know, people who immigrated to our country. Very successful. And just fascinating people. As I travel and I see the beauty and majesty of this world, Stephen talks about the thin places, a lot of thin places where you go and you just go, oh, wow, God, how did you ever come up with that? That's amazing. I just find that there's got to be a divine hand in there. I find I feel closer to God in nature than on pretty much any other place. I go into the man-made cathedrals that are so ornate and they're beautiful, and I can definitely appreciate the beauty. But and this is just me, but I find myself focusing more on, wow, man does a great job, don't they? You know, it's really beautiful. But when I'm in nature, that seems to be when I feel the closest to God. And I enjoy that aspect of it. And then just the whole different cultures, different ways of looking at things. And I think too, it makes you appreciate home. I love to travel, and I'm so excited to go on a trip, and then I'm so excited to get back home. And that's a good thing. So, yeah, any questions? Yeah.
I don't know how to politically correctly ask this, but did you notice differences in the cultures between Chile and Argentina and Brazil? I mean, are there specific?
Yes, there are definitely some differences. A lot depended on where you were. You know, the urban areas, the culture in the urban areas tends to be quite different from the culture in the very rural areas. So when you're down in Patagonia, not a lot of difference between the Argentinian side of Patagonia and the Chilean side of Patagonia, but very different from the cities. So if you go to South America, I wouldn't just hit the cities. Some of the best parts of it, I mean, there's a lot to see in the cities, but some of the best parts of it are just out and about in the more rural areas. The Argentina, politically, a lot of unrest, much more unrest in Argentina. Chile is more stable. So that is definitely a difference. And with the inflation and all, our guide, our tour director, was actually from Argentina. And so she talked a lot. She thinks there's going to be ultimately some type of political revolution there. That's her opinion, I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me because it's just very difficult for people there right now. Rio is not quite as safe as some of the other areas. You're fine if you stay in the touristy areas, but they do warn you about wandering off at night. And of course, beaches at night always can be a little shady, but we never felt uncomfortable or anything like that. So yeah, there are definitely differences, and certainly differences in this part of South America versus, say, Nicaragua, Peru. If you go to South America, definitely Peru is a cool place. I didn't talk about Peru, but that's a beautiful place to go. But this was a really interesting sort of thing. We do travel sometimes with tour groups, and not a commercial, but this trip was with Gate 1. We do Gate 1 most of the time. We find that we get as much as we do with other ones, and it's a little less expensive. Oh, this is interesting though. This is the one time we actually got a refund from Gate 1 because prices dropped so much in Argentina from the time we purchased the trip to the time we actually went. And I was impressed that they did refund some money because they got things, they cost them less. That never happens, right? When does the price ever go down? But it did, so that was kind of nice. So yeah, we do sometimes go with a tour company. And then sometimes, depending on where we're going. This trip, we had 4 internal flights, so in order to get to all the different places we wanted to go, when you're down in Patagonia, it's hard to get from one place to another. So renting a car and driving would have been horrible. So the easiest way to do this one was definitely with the tour group. And like I said, we enjoyed the people. It was just so interesting meeting and talking to some of them too. So that was good. And we did have plenty of free time to go and sit on the beach. I did not show you pictures of me sitting on the beach, but I did. Yes.
Was there any industry in Patagonia that you were able to see besides raising sheep?
You know, it's pretty much the sheep farming is huge down in that area. So that was a big thing. I do believe there's some mining, but I don't think.
Some oil.
there was some oil, but not huge amounts. Tourism, of course, is a big thing.
Fishing?
Some fishing, yeah, but not a lot. It's extremely rural. And big open spaces where there's just nothing. And then you have an occasional little town here and there.
Did you see evidence of sustainable energy sources, either wind power or solar use?
I don't remember seeing wind. That's an interesting question because heaven only knows they have wind. Now, they do not have that wind to that extent all year long. We were there in the windy season, so to speak. But you know, and I'm pretty conscious of seeing wind farms. We did not, that doesn't mean there weren't any, but we did travel around a lot. I did not see any wind farms. And I'm not saying there aren't any, so, you know, somebody doesn't have some solar, but I didn't see a lot of that. Now, there may have been some offshore, but no, I did not. Which is interesting, given the wind. Yeah.
When you're showing pictures of sailing among the icebergs, did it go back to the Titanic?
Yeah, of course. Of course, you know, you're looking at these monstrous icebergs and reminding yourself that you're seeing about 10% of the iceberg.
That's true.
You know, and it goes up several stories. And yeah, you do think about, hope we don't hit one of those underneath.
Yeah.
But we did not.
I was thinking, that's actually a serious question too. I was thinking the captain must know how to navigate.
I'm sure they do, and they go out, you know, every day, so they're certainly used to it.
Sonar and all that.
And they know exactly how close they're allowed to get to the glaciers when you go out. And you see the boats, you know, it's almost like there's a line in the water, because you see the boats come, and then there'll be 2 or 3, 4 boats, and they're all at the same distance, so you know they know exactly how close they're allowed to go.
That first city you showed, the
Mhm.
first city,
Santiago?
Santiago, there looked to be a haze over the city. Was that smog or is that just the weather?
I think it was just the weather,
Okay.
because it was really clear
Mm-hmm.
most of the time.
It's very dry though.
Yeah.
The river goes through, it's a little trickle.
That's true.
Like a 20-year drought.
It was very, very dry in
Extremely.
Chile,
Mm.
so dusty.
Very good.
Yeah.
I was amazed that small, what looked like a small boat was out at 70-mile-per-hour wind.
Yeah.
Were you fearful of that boat?
No, again, they go out all the time, they know, they're careful. They had called ahead, they knew that it got rougher as we were coming out of where we were going to go kind of around, like a bit of a bend, and they knew that it was getting rougher, and they knew that they couldn't do that if this was as rough as they could go. So they're very careful, and I think that's another advantage sometimes when you're in, I hate to call them third world countries, but developing nations. When you're with a tour group, they vet these things so well, they use them all the time. You're not going to get, to just go out and get on somebody's boat, I would have been nervous, because I don't know. But when you go with these tour companies, they can't afford to have anything happen, so they're very careful. And like I say, I respected the fact that they turned back and refunded the money. Because you know, if it's not safe, then let's not do it.
They have modern equipment too.
Oh, yes.
So, no.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they have all.
But it was bouncing really bad.
Yeah,
Is
Al,
that right?
Al got seasick. I did not. But we did take Dramamine because we knew it was going to be rough.
Sure.
Didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
That one day you said they canceled the trips to the small towns or villages.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a reason why?
No, and that we did on our own. We usually go a day early because you never know what's going to happen with your plane flight, and then if you don't want to miss it. So, and plus it gives you a chance to rest a little bit when you've been traveling all night. So we went a day early, and we just booked that through Viator. And I don't know why they canceled it, but yeah. I'm guessing there weren't enough people to make it worthwhile, since they didn't give us a reason, and it was a beautiful day, so it wasn't weather or anything like that. I don't really know.
Any other questions?
If you get a chance to go to South America, highly recommend it. It's an interesting place. And there are certainly a lot more places than just the ones that we went to, but it's a good start.
How long was your tour?
We were there about 3 weeks.
Wow.
We added a day at the beginning, and then we added a day at the end in Rio. I wanted a little time on the beach and just to, we did a little Sunset Harbor cruise and just kind of a low-key day before we flew back home.
Did you fly nonstop from somewhere to Santiago, or how did that?
I think we flew from Baltimore to Atlanta.
Yeah.
I do believe we changed flights. Now, coming back was a little harder because we had to fly from Rio to Sao Paulo to Atlanta, Atlanta to Baltimore, and then drive home. So that was kind of long. Going down, we were able to go from here to Atlanta and
No
then
thanks.
from Atlanta into Santiago.
No thanks.
Yeah, you just kind of get used to it. My father used to say, you go into screensaver mode. I thought that was a good, you just kind of go, and veg out. I wish I could sleep on planes. I admire these people who can get on a plane, conk out, go to sleep, wake up refreshed at their next stop. I don't sleep well on planes at all. I might doze for an hour or two, but it's all right. It's what price you pay to go. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope it inspired somebody to go. Happy traveling.